Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to some War Thunder. Today we're going to be flying out the good old-fashioned P-51 Mustang. I think I'm just going to run the D5. I don't have the D30, but I have the H. I think I'm just going to run the regular D. So, let's figure it out. So, the P-51D. The P-51s came about when the British went to an American manufacturer called North American Aviation and asked them, hey, we need some P-40s because the Battle of Britain was raging and they just couldn't really produce enough planes. North American came back and said, while we can't really give you any P-40s because we're ramping up production and this would be an entirely new production line, why don't we just give you an entirely new aircraft? This became the P-51. I believe it was initially called the A-36 Apache. The British flew it as the P-51B, the P-51D, and yeah, I really believe they more flew the B. I might be wrong about them flying the D. I knew they flew mostly the Bs to great effect. This American long-range escort fighter saw every single theater of the war. From it fought in the Western Front, protecting bombers of the 8th Air Force. It fought in China. It fought in the South Pacific, escorting B-17s and B-24 Liberators to the combat zone. It even saw combat service in Korea as a ground attack aircraft and an air superiority aircraft, while the Korean Air Force was still very, very underarmed. I've got a Spitfire on me. As long as I keep straight, I can outrun him. And once I get above .45, his fire is basically going to be ineffective. Like that, see? Because he's just firing 3-3s. His fire will basically be ineffective. But, the P-51s were known for their very, very long range, and their very long legs. They were known for being able to get a pilot to Berlin and back, of course with drop tanks, with time for the dogfight. Which was an incredible advantage early in the war, because this allowed our B-17s to get through and be escorted on the way in. It allowed our pilots to not be absolutely butchered by enemy interceptors. I'm in a bad spot and I don't have any teammates to help me out. The P-51 had an absolutely legendary career within the annals of U.S. dogfighting and U.S. Air Force history. It had dozens of aces, it flew thousands of missions, and is one of the most important fighter aircraft ever to come out of the United States. This aircraft essentially helped to free Europe. It escorted B-17s, B-24s, and B-29s to hit their targets deep within Germany, deep within Japan, deep within France, and deep within everywhere that they needed to hit. It helped break the will of the German people, and it was a very, very excellent dogfighter. Now, it did not dogfight in the traditional sense very, very often. It usually dove on its opponents from a higher position who were going after bombers. This allowed it to have a fantastic kill-to-death ratio, and just an absolute wonderful. It was beloved by pilots, by the pilots that flew it. Now, while I say it didn't dogfight, that does not mean it was not extremely capable in the hands of the right pilots. It has a fantastic roll rate, it's fast, it has great acceleration, and it worked very, very well to the chagrin of hundreds, if not thousands of German pilots over the skies of Germany, France, Belgium, and so on. The legendary status of the P-51 can never be mistaken, but that doesn't mean it didn't have a troubled past. During the development of the P-51, they discovered that the Allison engine it initially came equipped with, which was extremely similar to the one in the P-40, was extremely underpowered. But in the B variant of the Mustangs, the British started experimenting putting the Rolls-Royce Merlin into it, and it started performing very, very well. And in about the C variant, the Packard license-built Merlin engine was installed in all P-51s. And this is where we get the C variant, this is where we get the D variant, and this is where these planes become ridiculously good. And where their legend goes from just an average fighter aircraft to one of the most widespread known about aircraft in the history of aviation. During the Battle of Baden Plot, basically what happened was there was a surprise attack that the Germans launched to try and cripple Allied air power. While they did somewhat succeed, all of the aircraft were very, very quickly replaced, and no major damage was actually done to air crews. So they achieved what they set out, but they didn't achieve enough. And during this, it was one of the single biggest losses in a day I think it was the single biggest losses in one day that the Luftwaffe had ever incurred. They got absolutely butchered by Spitfires from the British, Spitfires, Tempests, Typhoons, P-51s, and P-47s. Again, including P-51s for one of my favorite squadrons, the Blue-Nosed Bastards. And they got absolutely hammered. I believe there were over 150 German aircraft lost in that day. And I believe 70 of those 150 German aircraft lost were taken prisoner and the rest were killed. And while they did destroy quite a few Allied aircraft on the ground, it didn't really end up affecting anything. And this happened, so the lead up to the Battle of Baden Plot was months, right? Because the Battle of the Bulge was happening, you know, Hitler's big last gambit, and he comes up snake eyes on that. He loses. And that was really, I won't say the end of the beginning, or the beginning of the end, because the end was already in sight in 1944. The second Allied troops landed on Normandy in 1944. The war was basically decided. The German people didn't have the time, the resources, or the manpower to support a costly conflict. In the Battle of Baden Plot, in concert with the Battle of the Bulge, really just kind of broke the German military. They didn't have the manpower, they didn't have the aircraft, they didn't have the pilots. And they, for God's sake, did not have the logistics. And a lot of that is 100% due to the brave escort pilots flying P-51s escorting B-17s over Germany, bombing and pummeling the German advance in the German industry to the point where they couldn't even function. I'll knock that guy out. I'll get 2 this game. So let's go enough about my history rambling. How does this thing fly in War Thunder? The P-51 in War Thunder is fairly true to life. It does very, very well at high altitudes, but since your average War Thunder RRB match does not give you enough time to get up to altitude in escort bombers, it doesn't really excel in that role. Now, it is a very, very useful dogfighter if used correctly. This dogfights a lot more standard American planes, like the P-47, like the P-40, like it dogfights like early jets do. And that's mostly because this is what it's designed to do. It's not designed to turn with the enemy. It's not a pure dogfighter like a Spitfire or a Zero. This thing, energy is its wheelhouse. Keep it at high energy, keep it fast, keep it high, and you will do just fine. Now, as you've seen today, I've been flying on the deck because it's just more my playstyle sometimes. Also, I've been a little distracted today, so I haven't really put a whole lot of back into absolutely butchering the enemy. But even so, I'm still getting a few kills here and there. I'm still doing pretty well. This thing can outturn some things. When it's high energy, it has a very, very good turn rate, and it doesn't compress that bad. It still compresses, but not as bad as some other planes at BR. Now, what you should be turning with are Focke-Wulf 190s and in later 109s. The E's and the F's are still a bit iffy sometimes, but the G's, the K's, they're focusing more and more on energy and bomber interception with heavy cannon. So you can outturn them. Again, that being said, only do it at high energy, only do it when you absolutely have to. So that's why I'm running down this 190. And there he goes. The 650 cals are a fantastic armament for this tier. You have a lot of ammunition, they hit fairly hard, and they shoot very quickly, and they're good velocity. So, this is your prototypical air superiority / long-range interceptor that has a lot of ammunition. It's meant to be in the air for a very long time, and it's meant to stay in the fight. As you can see, it absolutely wreaks havoc on Japanese planes. Because these 50 cals are nasty if you can aim them right. I very, very much like the maneuvers. I very, very much like. I like rolling scissors. I don't like to be in a flat turn fight. I like to introduce altitude into it because this thing maintains its energy very, very well. In fact, it's one of my favorites because of how well it maintains energy. If you're in a fight that you don't want to be in, this thing is also pretty fast, especially out of a dive. Just dive away. A lot of things won't be able to catch you. I very, very much am a vertical player, meaning, like, my first reaction to do anything is always go vertical. Because a lot of the planes I play are that plane. They really like going vertical. So I'm gonna... slip right in behind this Zero. Get a deflection, hit him a couple times. I'm not going to try and turn with an A6M3. That's just a recipe for disaster. I'm just going to go straight, and I'm going to try and knock this J-21 off this guy's tail. Which I will do so. I'm waiting for this Yak 3 to kind of catch up and shoot this guy off of me. But it doesn't really matter because I'm overextending. And as you can see, I still, like, I've been really undisciplined with my trigger, and I still have ammunition to spare. And I'll knock him out as my fifth and final kill of the day for the match.